Republican National Convention, which was here in San Diego. In fact, this was the chief convention hotel during that Republican National Convention. He's the ranking member on the House Committee on Government Oversight and Reform, and that puts him in the position of being able to cause a great deal of difficulty for Obama administration officials who do not want to be held accountable. When the Republicans take over the House later this year, he's poised to become one of the most influential and prominent members of Congress, and as you can see from this video, he has already established quite a track record of vigorous oversight, to say the least, and accountability on the Obama administration. Let's go to the videotape.
You don't have to watch too many newscasts on really any channel before you hear from or hear about California Congressman Darrell Issa taking on the Obama administration over something.
Some are calling California Congressman Darrell Issa the Obama administration watchdog.
Congressman Darrell Issa unearthed this.
Well, the White House wants this story over. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa has other ideas.
Mr. Issa has shown no sign of letting up, and I think Democrats on Capitol Hill realize that he really could be a problem.
Darrell Issa is promising to double his staff and embark on a witch hunt in the hopes of bringing down the Obama administration.
You know, Darrell Issa is right to be focusing on what goes on behind the scenes with this White House.
The White House counsel's office is reading every memo and every press release from Darrell Issa right now.
Ask the White House about Darrell Issa.
He will be an investigative pit bull.
He's been dubbed the administration's annoyer-in-chief as ranking Republican on the House Government Oversight Committee investigating waste, fraud, and abuse. He recently documented cases of the administration overstating its response to the BP oil disaster in the Gulf. He took on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve investigating AIG's collapse and exposed documents revealing the New York Fed's backdoor bailout of AIG partners. He led the congressional investigation into Acorn, which ultimately had its federal funds cut off. Issa's also accused the White House of unlawfully offering administration positions to Pennsylvania Congressman Joe Sestak and separately to former Colorado House Speaker Anthony Romanoff if he'd not run against incumbent Senator Michael Bennet. Issa's demanded a special counsel to investigate the administration. He's sunk his fangs into the Obama administration lately, and the DNC calls his investigations partisan wastes of time and money. But Democrats on the committee praise him.
He is committed to getting rid of waste. He's committed to getting rid of fraud and abuse. And of course, he knows there's a lot of stupid things going on, and he's working to get rid of those things as well.
Issa's investigative powers are limited as a minority member of Congress, but if the GOP reclaims control this year, Issa will become the chairman of the Government Oversight Committee, and he will have subpoena power to really go after the administration, just as the president starts to ramp up his re-election campaign.
If Darrell Issa, who's ranking on Reform Committee, gets a hold of subpoena power, look out.
You don't have to watch too many newscasts.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Darrell Issa, the next chairman of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee in the House of Representatives.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. You know, at the end of a convention, last night of a convention, when you've heard from Meg Whitman, our next governor, from Carly Fiorina, our next senator, and from Abel Maldonado, the right hand of our next governor. Yeah, you can go ahead, let it out if it feels good. And after you see a video that my very able staff has put together to make you think that I'm a mean guy, I thought I'd take a few moments to tell you it just ain't so. You know, I was labeled the annoyer-in-chief by the New York Times. The LA Times is still looking for a name for me. But the fact is, all I do is ask questions. All I do is respond, along with my staff of 35, to watchdogs, to inspector generals, to the General Accountability Office. All we really do is ask questions. You know, you're reading the newspaper, and a whistleblower calls you and says you need to look at Shore Bank. The Obama administration and Rahm Emanuel are propping them up. They're giving them TARP funds when, in fact, they're not solvent, just the opposite. They're the most underwater bank you could imagine. You get no answer. You send another letter, another one. You go on TV and say, what's with this? You get nothing. Well, last night, 7 p.m., Sheila Barrett called me from her vacation in Maine, She's the chairwoman of the FDIC, and she said, on Monday, my staff will meet with your staff and give you all of the facts, everything that led up to our taking over the bank tonight. Shore Bank's gone. The FDIC, I'm going to estimate, lost 2/3 of our money. They already lost all the TARP money that was poured in there. Now, there'll be 204 banks last year, and perhaps the same or more this year closed up. No one bank makes a scandal. Matter of fact, Maxine Waters isn't even making a scandal. She says she's innocent of anything but doing what she would do for anybody. At least anybody that her husband was on the board of. I could not make these things up. You know, I'm a child and a grandchild of immigrants. I'm a kid who grew up looking for union jobs because they paid better. I went to college on the GI Bill and an Army scholarship. I'm sort of what you would figure would be a typical Democrat kid. The difference really is that I don't trust government. The other side does. They not only trust it, they create it, they love it, they nurture it. You know, Abel, your daughter, as much as you love her, has never been nurtured like the Democrats nurture government. They're just nothing like government for the Democrats. And so, over the years, in life experience after life experience, in the Army, when I saw senior officers way too cozy with our contractors, and then next thing you know, some of those officers, specifically the ones that were so cozy, now work for them, doubled, tripled their pay. It happens. Doesn't happen for most people. Certainly most officers serve totally honorably and do exactly what's right. But when it happens, there has to be an outcome. When there's waste and fraud, when there's distortions of democracy or distortions of the spending of your tax dollars, or currently, obviously, borrowed money from people who speak Mandarin Chinese. That's true. August 4th, we went into deficit. Starting on August 4th, we started borrowing money from the Japanese, the Chinese, everybody but the Greeks. They don't have any. It's sad, too, because they keep saying they could borrow more if we just weren't taking it all. It wasn't bad enough that we not only were borrowing money, but Speaker Pelosi called us back to get $26 billion more of new spending. And that didn't seem like a scandal. How many of you heard there was a scandal around that? Anyone? Well, there was. It was the most silent scandal in American history. The president has about 2/3 of the TARP money at his disposal because much of it has come back. And he has almost 2/3 of the stimulus money unspent. And yet we were called back to spend $26 billion of additional money on what? On what they're spending the stimulus on. It is so bad in Washington that even when they have nearly $1 trillion of slush fund money in each in two different piles, it's not enough. They've got to go rework a little bit more because the teachers union want money and they don't want you to spend the money they're counting on in 2011 and 2012 leading up to the president's reelection. Every day, every one of you, if you drive any distance, is likely to see a sign that says, paid for by, by the recovery bill. Look at recovery.gov. Now, when we came home, when our parents came home from World War II, grandparents in many cases, one of the first laws that was passed post-World War II that was all new and resulting in that from that war was in fact the propaganda laws. Americans who had served in the war as they came into Congress saw a need to make sure that the executive branch could never do what they did in Europe, in fascist country after fascist country, use taxpayer dollars to distort the truth, to be popular when in fact they deserved no such popularity, to make them think they were winning the war when they were losing it. And just as freedom of the press is crucial, $30 or $40 million worth of signs with an advertising value of over $1 billion, much over $1 billion per month. Now, anybody that's in advertising knows what a large billboard strategically placed is worth when 200 or 300,000 people go by it. The question is, what's the worth of one at the entrance to Dulles Airport when in fact there's no federal dollars being spent from recovery at Dulles Airport? I don't know, but it's the biggest one I've ever seen. And it's beautiful. And it's propaganda. If George W. Bush had done it, it had been propaganda. Heck, if Ronald Reagan had done it, it had been wrong. What we as Republicans have to do is we have to build a permanent and indelible distrust of government. Now, Abel's an honest man. Meg Whitman's an honest woman, and they're both going to win in November. But we as Californians and we as Americans have an absolute responsibility to ensure that that large bureaucracy that they will control, that will waste, that will cover up, that will tell us that everything is great when in fact it's not true, are held accountable. There are many ways to do it. And I'm going to tell you something here tonight that most people, my own campaign people, know it. I thought about running for the U.S. Senate this cycle. I thought about what I would give up. I would give up the ability to do the most important part of the constitutional responsibility of Congress, to hold the executive branch accountable, to contain them to only that which the American people, through their elected representatives in the House and the Senate, allocate for them to do. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Leader Boehner and the conference voting out all earmarks. We do no earmarks whatsoever now. The amazing thing is we never did 10% of the earmarks that every administration has done. I mean, what's a government grant if a cabinet officer can issue it and come in for the ribbon cutting? Have we really just begun to realize that the growth of government is so great that $1.4 trillion will be borrowed to support this government? And before you lose track of what $1.4 trillion is, some people always want to say, well, if you gave away $1 million a day since the birth of Christ, you still wouldn't have given away $1 trillion. Now, the problem is, I wasn't there for that birth. I believe in it, but I just wasn't there, so I have a hard time with that. But let me give it to you another way. If you laid off the Army, the Navy, and the Marines, if you did away with every piece of road construction, every new federal building, you did away, in fact, with the entire effective discretionary budget, you still have some of the deficit left. We are basically have run out of money before we get through what's called the non-discretionary. So before Congress authorizes one actual penny of what's called discretionary spending, we're out of money. You don't have to know how much that is to know that we are dead wrong. And here's something that will scare you even more. If we take the top taxpayers in America, that top bracket, that amazing bracket that keeps moving, you know, the millionaires, the 250, the 200,000, wherever Obama puts the filthy rich in the future, if you take that entire group, and we'll just take the top 3%, and you tax them at 100%, you don't eliminate the deficit. Here's one for you. If you tax them at 100% and take away their residual wealth, you don't eliminate the deficit. We as Americans, the 50%, 47 to 50% that don't even pay a penny in net tax, we are going to have to tax ourselves or we're going to have to shrink government. The top 53% that pay all of the cost of our nation are going to have to shrink government or there isn't enough money to do it. Now, I'm a social conservative and I'm a fiscal conservative. And before I went to Congress, I thought that was enough. And it isn't. Tonight, I will tell you that we have to be willing to tear down the Republican Party as we have grown to know it and rebuild it as a better and stronger and more constitutional party than it's ever been. We have to say, and Ron, you were ready for this, not everyone was. We have to say to the Tea Party, get out of our way, you're not going far enough. You're not strident enough, you're not angry enough, that government has grown so big that the opportunities that we inherited from our parents, and they inherited in many cases from World War II and World War I vets coming home, we've stolen it. It's gone. The $13 trillion in debt has already eclipsed the inheritance we all got, and that's without the unfunded portions that exist. We have already squandered the legacy of our parents. Now, before you think that this is the opposite of Ronald Reagan's Morning in America, that it's midnight in America, it's not. We can recover. But to recover, we have to be the party that makes a difference. Now, in November, they're going to vote the Democrats out. I'm here today to tell you we will be the majority party in the U.S. House in January. But that's not good enough. That's not going to make the difference. We've been the majority party before. I had my first 6 years in the majority. It wasn't enough. And if I'd been there for the 6 years of the majority from 1995 through our loss, or the 94 election, if you will, it wouldn't have been enough. I like Denny Hastert. I know Denny Hastert. He's a good man. I like Newt Gingrich. But Newt Gingrich took the committee that I serve as head of, and he chopped it down because he said, we've got to cut back. Poor Newt went the exact wrong direction, and he's a historian. You don't reduce the only check on growing an out-of-control government by reducing the people who do the oversight. Just the opposite. We need more inspector generals. We need more transparency. What we need, and what I tried to get in the financial reform, and I will get as chairman of government oversight, we need data transparency of every single document, unclassified, and every single expenditure and every single activity of the federal government. We need it seamlessly available to you, the public, because we need everyone in this room and everyone in America to have the real opportunity, as you Google to find a picture of somebody, to Google to find the waste, fraud, and abuse in government, the absurdity of government. There are organizations on the far left that today I'm partnering with because they've developed over time a healthy disregard for government. POGO. They never heard of a Republican they liked, and they actually gave me an award. Why? Because they hate the federal government, because they're looking for a conspiracy everywhere. And by the way, they're all Democrats. But you know what? We should have been the party that produced the Sunlight Foundation and POGO. We should have been the party that said from day one, we've got to get involved in ensuring there is so much transparency, so much sunlight, that not one penny of waste can go on. The craziness that goes on in government all the time, and Abel talked about it. He was able to go in and cut the size of what he does fairly quickly, renegotiate. Can you imagine government thinking of something proactive the way Abel did? Renegotiating a lease at a time when every lease is going down. I've got to tell you, the census moved in the bottom of a building that I lease, and they paid double what I pay upstairs. And I'm the guy that's supposed to, if we get the majority, be completely in charge of the census. I was furious. I said, how did you come up with that? They said, well, it's a short lease. I said, yeah, but it was an empty suite. You know, for half the price, the guy still would have put you in it. That's the kind of thinking that has to happen. I'm a proud Republican. I'm a Reagan Republican. The first president I voted for was Richard Nixon. I'm not a Nixon Republican. Nixon was a big government Republican. He was a guy that thought that there was a Republican solution to government. And I voted for George W. Bush. But I'll tell you, many of the programs that we enacted under George W. Bush are proving to be just the same as Richard Nixon programs. You grow the federal government, particularly outside of its mandate, and you grow the unnecessary waste that goes hand in hand with it. We, the Republican Party, have to stop that. Now, I'm going to give you just a couple of more quick ones. Some of you in this room, Charles, I'm going to venture that you're giving away enough money, but you probably will still be in a high tax bracket after Prop 20 wins and Prop 27 is defeated. At least I hope so. Save a little. The truth is, though, that we're talking about this Bush tax cuts. Now, most people can't really put it in perspective, and they just listen to Bush tax cuts. They say, well, I don't want to give up the tax cuts. Why not defend the obvious, which is, at the end of the Bush administration, the most highly productive people in America are still paying more than they did when Ronald Reagan left office, even than when George Herbert Bush left office. Matter of fact, they're just paying a little bit less than when Bill Clinton left office, and a whole lot more than when Bill Clinton came in. The truth is, we just shaved a little of the top. On the other hand, we took a huge amount of people who should have paid a little bit, should have been part of the investment in America. We took them completely off the rolls. And it was a mistake. It was a real mistake. Americans who need a helping hand should get that helping hand. But every American should pay some tax and be invested in this process. So as we start talking about tax policy, let's talk about it logically. Every American should invest and pay as they can for their country. There should be no vilification of one group and no, well, of course I don't pay to another. Just the opposite. We should all pull what we can pull. And that's not what's being talked about in Washington. More importantly, all of us as Republicans tend to know the name Art Laffer and the Laffer curve. Now, many people think the Laffer curve and the Reagan tax cuts go hand in hand. How many people think that? Okay, raise your hands later. It's a popular idea. Art Laffer will tell you that's just not so. What actually the Laffer curve's all about, and you do actually know the answer to this, the Laffer curve is about how you feel about incremental work. It's about whether you get up in the morning saying, if I work a little harder and I make a little more, am I going to get to keep the lion's share of it? It's really about the incentive that is taken away by punitive taxes versus a flatter, fairer tax causing people to work harder and harder and harder. The bargain that was in place, not when the tax cut of 1982 went into place, but the bargain that was in place in 1986 when all these loopholes were taken away and a very flat, very fair 28% was put in its place. Whether you were paying 15 because you were a little lower or you're paying the 28 because you were doing well, you knew that government wasn't being punitive, and in fact, you could sort of in your mind say, 75 cents out of every dollar I get to keep. It's sort of, you round things off. You felt good about it. They take a quarter of it, which rose to 28 during negotiations, because that's what happens in Congress. We lost that. We're going to be at 39.6. California's going to take 10.55. Then there's going to be a 3% from the Obamacare, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty soon people are going to say one thing, which is, I can't have anything left over unless I start finding loopholes. And they'll come to Washington, they'll negotiate loopholes, and they'll try to get little carve-outs and craziness. And we're right back to the same problem. Instead of an honest, fair system that says government has legitimate needs and we tax for it, and American people have a right to every penny that they can possibly have to invest or to spend as they see fit, that will be lost again. So when we talk about tax reform, I'm not going to argue over the Bush tax cuts versus not tax cuts. I think, in fact, we have to make this tax code work in a way in which the American people stop believing that somebody else is paying for it, when in fact, most of it's being paid for by borrowed money. Not most of it, but a third of it by borrowed money. I'm going to draw this to a close because I can talk about the Obama administration and the craziness they do, and none of them will be surprised. But let's talk about earlier things. Let's talk about ourselves. When Bill Clinton left office, there was an organization started by Ronald Reagan by executive order called the Mineral Management Service. When President Bush was sworn in, shortly after that it was discovered that under Clinton's watch, the Mineral Management Service had put together what was effectively defective contracts for their very cozy relationships with natural gas and oil producers. And the way that natural gas contracts worked, as natural gas went up in price, instead of essentially they're starting to pay their fair share, which was supposed to be 17% or so, they weren't going to have to. And it was absolutely in violation of government regulations that had been started with a bill by Congressman Ken Calvert, which was law. I mean, they just absolutely did it. The contract's defective. In 2005, after repeated attempts to get that information to the Bush administration and have them act on it, I used, for the only time I did as a subcommittee chairman, used the subpoena power one time. I subpoenaed the 5 presidents of the oil companies. Now, the amazing thing is I didn't subpoena them to beat them around the head and shoulders, although they deserved it for the fact that they'd used this agency as like a personal tool for years of rubber stamping whatever they wanted to do, some of it good, some of it not good. I called them in so they would tell us what we had already learned in public, which was Mineral Management Service was too cozy, it was corrupt, It was a revolving door. It didn't care even when the oil companies themselves, in written and oral correspondence, pointed out the defects in the contracts. They said, don't worry about it, even though it was billions of dollars of your money. And when President Bush left office, we had not recovered a penny. The Mineral Management Service had not changed, and it had been 3 more IG reports, another GAO study, all saying the same thing. As a Republican who started that investigation in more than enough time to a reformed Mineral Management Service before the people of the Gulf paid an incredibly high price economically and environmentally, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that Republicans were not zealots against flaws in government that were pointed out by inspector generals. That happened on our act. Let me give you one more. Now, the Democrats and Republicans flip back and forth in Washington, but I'll tell you something that didn't change. Angelo Mazzillo, a resident, I think he's being indicted, but right now he's still a resident of the Los Angeles area. He came up with something called the Friends of Angelo program at the early parts of the boom in the home industry. And he was putting together the largest packager of mortgages. He figured out that if he included in the Friends of Angelo, not just his friends, not just the employees of Countrywide, but he included at least 20 key members of the financial service staff in the Senate, many of them working for Senator Bennett, a Republican, people working for Barney Frank, a Democrat, people working for Mike Oxley, a Republican, and he gave them loans. Now, you've all heard about Chris Dodd getting his loan from Friends of Angelo, and that's a scandal for the Democrats. But this scandal was bipartisan. Angelo Mazzillo was giving hundreds of thousands of dollars in discounts on loans selectively to people who could help him. They gave 173 of these specially managed VIP loans to people at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And guess what? Those organizations took this. Are we allowed to say crap at a convention? Well, let's just say these subprime loans, which is another name for what I said earlier, they took them by the bucket load. There's $6 trillion worth of marginal, bad, and ever defaulting loans over at the GSEs, Freddie and Fannie. And the largest pool of those by far came from Countrywide. The whole point was Countrywide created friends over there that would take anything they packaged up, and they made a lot of money on it. And Angelo Mazzillo didn't actually hide this, he did it in plain sight. Well, today in the Congress under Democrats, both of the Democrats we pointed out had received these loans were given ethical clearance. The U.S. Senate, on a bipartisan basis, included Republicans, said that they didn't see an ethics violation there. Shame on them. So I'm here tonight, I said I was a social conservative, I didn't talk about one social program. I'm talking about the most important thing for the liberty of every American. The ability to have what we believe is right should be fought out front and at the ballot box. And organizations like ACORN or organizations that can buy off government officials to take debt and put it on our back when in fact these loans should never have been made should not be bought behind closed doors. So when I say why I have the best job in Washington, and with your help and the voters' help, I'm going to have the best job in the world come January of next year, it's because it's not that it's Obama I get to oversee. It's not that my subpoena power is going to bring down a president. It's that it can, and with your help, it will change America to a country in which there is transparency in government, there is a degree of honesty in government, and the only people that fear their government will be those who have done wrong. And the people in government that will fear the people are those who are doing wrong. So I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank you for being part of this revolution. And with God's help and the voters' indulgence, we're going to change America to the country we really want it to be. And that means we are going to be the home of the free and hopefully the home of people who understand it's our government. We do not give them money because they want it. We give them money only when they need it. And right now they have more than they need, and we need to change that. Thank you all. God bless and good night.
Wow. Seriously, wow. I asked them both up here. One of my favorite quotes of all time, maybe my most favorite, is Thomas Paine, who said that a duty of a patriot is to protect his country from its government. Think about that again. A duty of a patriot is to protect his country from his government. In their own ways, each of these two are doing that. And Abel doesn't talk a lot about it, but Abel's the one, of course, who carried the workers' comp bill, which is perhaps the most true reform that has come out in the last couple of years. And I'll just give you an example of it. I have a sort of a constituent of mine whose workers' comp bill had risen from $650,000 a year in his business to $4 million. And